So I probably got enough. How many bottles of water do I need?
15.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 bottles of water. How many adults do I have here tonight?
I got hydrogen.
Oh, thank God you're here.
I'm gonna be in there, though.
What's that?
I'm gonna be in there.
You're
What?
gonna be in there?
You gotta yell the answer out for me.
Well, we're gonna do a science experiment tonight. Is that the teenage class in there? Why don't we keep the teens out here and we're gonna do a science experiment tonight. And I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6
Is
adults.
anybody allergic to bee stings?
Okay, I got 6 adults. No, I got 7. All right.
Somebody have peanut allergies?
What's
Are you
that?
gonna get them to sign waivers?
Get them to sign waivers? Yeah, we can do that after class. Okay. Let's have a prayer and then we'll get started. Nick, are we online? Okay. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this time to come together. We desire to look into your word and understand the things that you would have us do. We ask that you would be with us tonight as we study and help us to understand the things that you have given us, to understand how you have made us and the things that you expect of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay.
All right. Let's do 248, 248. How firm a foundation. Let's do verses 1, 2, 5, and 6. How firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word. What more can he say than to you he has said, you unto Jesus for refuge have fled. Fear not, I am with thee, oh be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and will still give thee aid. I'll strengthen thee, help thee, and cause thee to stand, upheld by my gracious omnipotent hand. Down to old age all my people shall prove unchangeable love, and when hoary heads shall their temples adorn, like lambs they shall still in my bosom be born. The soul that on Jesus hath lain for repose, I will not desert to his foes, lest all the hell should endeavor to shake. I'll never, no, never, no, never forsake. Okay, before class, let's do 436. 436. Let's do all 4 verses. Near, still nearer, close to thy heart, draw me, my Savior, so precious thou art. Fold me, oh fold me thou contrite heart, grant me the cleansing thy blood doth impart. Grant me the cleansing thy blood doth impart. Nearer, still nearer, Lord, to be thine. Sin with its follies I gladly resign. All of its pleasures, pomp and its pride, give me but Jesus, my Lord crucified. Give me but Jesus, my Lord crucified. Near, still near, while life shall last, till safe in glory my anchor is cast. Through endless ages, ever to be near my Savior, still nearer to thee. Nearer my Savior, still nearer to thee. Invitation will be 255, 255. You go to class or...
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone here. Can you hear me back there in the back? It'd be good if you want to move up closer to the front.
Did you want Rita and Katrina to stay in here, or did you want them to go?
Well, let them go back there. We'll get this. I've only got 6 bottles, so we're going to have an experiment. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Nick makes 6. So we'll do that. But first, I got to get to that part of Proverbs that prompts it. So we're going to continue in Proverbs. Just a brief. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this idea of 3 things that are majestic in peace. Yes, 4. This 3, yes, 4, 4, yes, 5, 5, yes, 6. We see all this progression, and it's used to draw attention to the things that are being talked about, and we talked about several of those just a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to go on and look a little bit further into Proverbs we were basically getting ready to take up Proverbs 6, verse 20 through 24. And this is one of the things that Proverbs keeps us at. In 20, he says, "My son, keep your father's command and do not forsake the law of your mother. Bind them continually upon your heart, tie them around your neck." These appeals to you to listen to what's in Proverbs occur a lot through the book, all the way from chapter 1 through chapter 30. And so we'll keep looking at those. He says, "When you roam, they will lead you. When you sleep, they will keep you. When you wake, they will speak to you. For the commandment is a lamp, and a law, a light. Reproofs of instruction are the way of life, to keep you from the evil woman, from the flattering tongue of seductress." Probably ought to have left that last verse off, because this is an introduction to that. And there are several introductions, and they kind of get a little bit disjointed as we go through it. But I want you to think about what it says in verse 23. "For the commandment is a lamp, and the law a light." Where have you heard that concept before? In the New Testament. How about Jesus? Was he a light? He was a light to the world. You're a light. You're a lamp. Put a lamp on a hillside. All these things come up. We've talked about this. He says reproof of instruction or a way of life. Okay? Basically, this is one of the things that I keep going back to, and I want you to make note of some of these. Deuteronomy 8. God says directly, and you shall remember that the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He humbled you, allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Lord. We're tested. God says he's going to test us. Why does he test us? Tells us right here. Find out what's in your heart. And when you get a test, God watches what we do and we see, he finds out what's in our heart. That's why it's important to understand this. And he did that so that you might know. In other words, he did that so that you will learn something. He tests us that we learn. And in this particular passage, he says that man shall not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Lord. Now that should sound familiar. Can anybody tell me where you find that?
Luke.
What's that?
Luke.
Luke? Okay. What's it the account of? Who says it?
Jesus says.
Jesus says it. When he was tested by Satan, what did he say? When Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, I can imagine fasting 40 days and 40 nights. I would probably be dead by then. And afterward he was hungry. That has got to be one of the biggest understatements that exist in the Bible. Now when the tempter came to him, he said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. And Jesus answered, and he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. It's taken directly from that passage in Deuteronomy. And it's a quote from it. So it appears twice, these phrases in those words. Keep you from the evil woman. This is an appeal to listen, to keep the word, to keep the law, to understand it, because in the back of my mind, in the future, before we get through some other stuff, it's going to focus on this idea for the young man who he's talking to. He says, do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her allure your eyelids. For by means of a harlot, a man is reduced to a crust of bread, and adulteress will prey upon his precious life. Now, we're going to talk more about this, but I'm not going to go over that right now. We find out in Proverbs, we're going to get a much more detailed account of what can happen or what will happen, and it ends in costing him his life. Now here's where we get there. Because he's leading up to this, I want you to get the idea that he's setting the conditions about what he's going to talk about here. He says, can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? Okay. Now, I probably should have left off verse 29 because it's part of the next. This is an introduction to verse 29, just like that other was an introduction to the evil woman. But what about this fire in his bosom? The bosom here is to enclose, basically literally to touch, to take it within you or encompass it. And so can you encompass fire and not get burned? And that brings up my science experiment. If you try to
Let's do the hot coals deal.
do the hot cold stuff, do the hot cold. Well, what do you feel when you touch something that's hot? Somebody asked, what do you feel? No, what do you feel? What are the choices? Stop and think. Logically, what do you feel?
I feel pain.
Are you touching something and you can tell what its temperature is from that?
No, you know it's painful, so you get away from it.
Okay, so if you touch something that's cold, you know it's cold, colder than what?
You are.
It's colder than you are, but you don't know how cold it is, do you? So one of the things that you could feel when you touch something is the difference in temperature between you and what it is. Is that what you really feel? How many of you think that's what you feel? The difference in temperature between you and whatever you're touching? No hands. Wow, we got a bunch of science students here.
A lot colder than you think it is if it feels hot.
What's that?
Things that feel really cold can also feel hot after a few seconds.
Well,
That's why you can't trust what you think you feel
well,
with that.
what you touch and what you feel may be related to the temperature difference, but it isn't the temperature difference that you're feeling. What happens when you touch? What happens when you're hot and you pick up an ice cube?
It's cold.
What happens? What happens right there where you touch that ice cube?
Your fingers get cold.
Your fingers get cold, and what else happens to the ice cube?
It starts to melt.
The ice cube melts. What does it take to melt an ice cube?
Heat.
It takes energy to melt that ice cube, doesn't it? So when you touch something, are you feeling the temperature difference, or are you feeling the energy transfer? If you touch something cold, you're feeling an energy transfer from you to what's cold. If you touch something that feels hot, you're feeling the energy transfer from what's hot to you. You heard this old saying about the frog. If you put him in water and heat him up very, very slowly, you can boil him and he won't jump out. I don't think that's true, okay? Because I think the frog has another mechanism built into him. But we are strangely made. When God made us, He made us in a way that we don't always perceive what we have or what we do. And so I've got a little experiment that I want.
How come, now, I won't tell you how I know this, but people, if they think you're gonna burn them with something and you put something cold on them, you can't tell the difference.
Well, if it's cold enough,
Because they don't see.
if it's, for instance, I've been near liquid hydrogen at work. If you get spattered with liquid hydrogen, which is its temperature while it's still liquid at atmospheric pressure is minus 320 something degrees. And it gets spattered on you, it's like a burn. It feels like it's burning. Within some limits, though, you can feel that energy transfer. And so hand out these 6 bottles of water. Bob, why don't you hand them out? I want every one of the adults here to have a bottle of water. Are there 6 bottles in there?
More or less.
More or less. Pretty close. Now, why is this important? Or why is this important to me?
It's not be that cold you didn't react.
Why is this important to me? I don't think you can do the experiment with that, but we'll try. If you got a spare bottle, bring it back. All right, now I want you to hold the bottle very still in your hand.
Over your head.
Very, very still. Hold it. If you got an extra bottle, I'll take
For
one.
you, buddy, sure. There you go.
Okay. What do you feel? Hold it down here on the plastic. What do you feel?
Plastic.
Feels cold, doesn't it?
Cool.
Okay, it feels cold. Swirl it.
Got colder.
Got colder, didn't it? It didn't. It got colder. Did the water get colder? No.
The plastic got colder.
No, the plastic didn't get colder.
Yeah, the plastic
Well,
got
yeah, the
colder.
plastic did get a little bit colder. Maybe.
Not like it got colder.
No. No, it didn't. It's your sense here. What happened? What made it feel colder? What made the temperatures in here didn't change materially at all,
Your,
did they?
your hand warmed up the plastic, and then when you slush it around, it cooled the plastic back off.
Well, it warmed up the plastic a tiny bit, but it didn't cool it back off again. What you're feeling is the energy transfer from your hand into that water. Now, it goes through the plastic, okay? But what you're feeling is the energy transfer from your hand into the water. Why? Because you increase the velocity of the water on the inside. And let me show you what the equation for that is. Okay. Okay. That Q dot, that energy that you see up there in that equation is made up of HC, A, T hot minus T cold, or delta T. About the only Greek I understand. Those delta is that Greek, is the capital letter delta. So you multiply what is a heat transfer coefficient that changes with the velocity. All you did in that equation, you didn't change T hot, you didn't change T cold materially. All you did was change H sub C. When you do this and change the velocity on the inside, all you did was change the H sub C in that equation. And the Q dot went up. That's what happened. Now, technically you're right. Did you heat up the plastic a tiny bit? But you can't, it's not something you're going to feel. What your material, when you stop, it goes back to the same feeling you had before, didn't it? If you hold it still again, it'll feel warmer, just like it did before. Because you didn't put enough energy into this system to materially change the temperatures of any of this stuff. But you changed the velocity of that water. So what you feel when you touch something that's hot or cold, you feel Q dot. Is it related to the temperature difference? Yes, it is. Okay, and this is only part of the equation. This equation only covers the fluid side on the plastic. There's another equation that governs how much is transmitted through the plastic. The thinner the piece, no matter what its thermal conductivity, whether it's copper or whether it's plastic, which is a poor thermal conductor, the thinner it is, the less problem you have transferring heat because it has to go through less material. It's like resistance. Basically, it doesn't cover what happens in your hand. If you feel your hand now, your hand's gotten a little bit colder because some of that heat got taken out of your hand and into the water. But if I put a thermometer in there, it didn't change materially that water's temperature. What you feel is the energy transfer. You don't feel the temperature. Let me tell you another. When I was a kid, this is what got me started on this. Back in Arkansas in the wintertime, it rarely snows in southwest Arkansas. How many of you here have ever played in the snow as a kid? Oh, Nick too, okay. When you went out and played in the snow and you made a snowman without any gloves on, what happened to your hands? They got really cold, didn't they?
Started to hurt.
Even with
It started to hurt. It started to hurt. When you came back in, did you have the bright idea, like I did, to go put your hands under warm water to warm them back up? What happened when you put those cold hands under that warm water? It hurt. It felt like scalding hot boiling water when it was there. Was it scalding hot boiling water? No. Because what you were feeling was the energy transfer. As a matter of fact, I went back in and turned the hot water on and touched it for a second. It was like touching a hot stove. So I turned the hot water off, turned the cold water on. And the cold water still felt like it was almost boiling. It wasn't really, it was the temperature difference driving the Q dot was what making things feel that way. these equations work, and they're similar forms of equations for conduction through copper, aluminum, plastic, wood, whatever. And they work that way. So what you feel is not directly temperature. It's related to temperature difference, as you can see from T hot minus T cold. That's a big part of the term. But it's the energy transfer that activates your nerves.
Did you say when I put my hot hands on this water ball, it doesn't change the temperature of the water inside?
Over time, it will.
It does.
But in those few minutes, it's a time dependent. This is flow rate. This is BTUs per hour, or however many units you want to make. Okay? It will eventually warm up, but it's got to take all that heat from your body to do that. That's not what you feel. Okay? Eventually, as it gets closer and closer, you'll feel less of a temperature difference because there's lower flow rate as the temperatures, as T hot minus what? What happened here?
Computer got too hot.
T hot minus T cold gets closer together. Now these are this is the way God made us. It's not always obvious. In these mathematical terms, and people have, this is just the fluid side equation of this. There's not the equation that you have to add all the resistance of the plastic, the resistance of the contact of my hand, how much my hand conducts, and how much the water conducts within it. This is just that interface between the plastic and the water, which you felt the change in as you rotated it. That's what changed. That H sub C was the only thing that changed materially in that equation. Yeah, out there in the 4th or 5th decimal place, it might have heated up the water some or cooled down your hand. But it's so small, you're going to be hard-pressed. I would be hard-pressed to measure it with sophisticated instruments. Okay? But it changes because you are flowing energy from you into the water. Now, here's something else that's interesting about how this world works. Now, this is just some interesting facts about these Greek letters and how they're used and in mathematical terms. But here's a heat transfer coefficient for radiation. What's unusual about that? Now, this is how your radiant heater works. When you turn on that electric heater and you've got that heating element in that radiant heater, it's heating air with a blower via film convection over that heating element. When you're standing back over here and you're putting your hand up there and you're feeling that heat, this is the equation that governs that radiant heat. What do you notice that's different about this?
We don't have a C in there.
It's T hot minus T cold to the 4th power. That's T hot minus T cold times T hot minus T cold times T hot minus T cold times T hot minus T cold multiplied by itself 4 times. That temperature difference has a far more effect in radiant heat transfer than do these contact forms of heat transfer. Okay? Guess what governs the temperature of our world? What does our world come in contact with that transfers heat in or out of it?
Radiant heat from the sun.
Radiant heat from the sun, and radiant heat exposed to the cold of the universe. So as the Earth rotates to the sun radiates, heats up the Earth. As that side of the Earth rotates to the dark side, the Earth radiates out into space. That's what governs our temperature. Now, just when you take a look at, that's the equation for radiant heat transfer between two bodies. That first one was just the radiant energy that comes off of a body. That was only half of the equation. This is another one. See how complicated this one is? Basically, it's Q dot is basically sigma, which is the Stephan-Boltzmann constant, which is a constant value in nature. It's F1 to 2 times A1 times the temperature difference to the fourth. There are three different terms. There's F1, A1, epsilon 1, and epsilon 2 of those two different bodies that control that radiant heat exchange between those two bodies. It's complex. Now, if you add a lot of other things to it, like involved in our atmosphere, the mass of the water in the atmosphere radiates at one rate, the air radiates at another rate, the CO2 radiates at another rate. All these things change. All of those things become terms in what controls the world's temperature. God made some pretty complex things. We're just now beginning to understand what they are. And we're not to the point where we're just basically beginning to scratch the surface. We think we're so smart, but we're not. There is so much more that we need to know and learn to understand how to predict this stuff. And that's one of the points in this little exercise that just set me off on a rabbit chase when he said, can you take fire into your bosom and not be burned? Can you walk on coals and not be seared?
Yeah, you can though.
So what's that?
You can.
Well, if you've got the right insulators, you can. Okay? But something thin enough that people, they tell me, I saw a program where it postulated that this Indian guy that walked across this bed of coals had this liquid that he rubbed on his feet and then he walked.
A wet mat.
Yeah. I don't believe that. I'm not sure how they did that. But basically what it would have to do is just like this thin piece of plastic,
It's a thermal.
that little thin layer of liquid that he rubbed on his feet would have to insulate his feet, stop the heat transfer, not the temperature, stop the heat transfer from the coals to his feet. I don't think they can do that. I think there's subterfuge going on here.
You mean it's a trick?
Yeah, I think it's a trick. I absolutely think it's a trick. But it's interesting that these things, we're beginning to learn these things, and basically you have to deal with it throughout the day. We are, as human beings, we are fearfully made. It's almost awesome the more I learn about the human body, that God created it this way. And one of the things that I want everybody to understand, listening at home, whatever, we did not happen just by chance. There's something called irreducible complexity. You are so complex that some of the things that go to make up your life, if just one little thing changes, you die. All of that had to happen all at once for you to live and function the way you are. And what does that imply? That implies you were created, you were made. Adam was made, Eve was made, and we were made in a way that we reproduce. And this is just scratch the surface. I did some lessons about how birds fly. The complexity of how birds fly. And we haven't even, people didn't even know how birds flew. They could copy it. As a matter of fact, I found one reference to a model that was found in an Egyptian tomb that they think is more than 3,000 years old, of a bird carved out of very light wood. And they think they could throw it, and they tried it. Well, they made another one like it, and it would glide like a bird, like a glider, like a balsa wood airplane. So they were messing with things like this 3,000 years ago, but they didn't know how it worked. We're still learning how birds fly. It just, to me, it's just it's a matter of faith. And one of the reasons why I brought it up is I wanted us to understand basically how complex we are and how complex the things are around us. It's not just as simple as a black box, like a lot of people would think, oh, this black box, well, over periods of thousands of years, this black box just happened. No, it didn't. Things are so complex that you can't change one or two things at a time and make progress, because just changing one thing kills the original. It's got to all come together to work. Yeah.
Just as something I've always heard, I've always wondered if it's true, but I've never checked it out. I have always heard that from everything that we know about flying, a bumblebee should not be able to fly. But no one ever told him that, so therefore he flies.
Well, the question I ask is, who said that the bumblebee can't fly?
Well, I'm saying, from everything we know about flying.
I'm going to say this, Steve. There are engineers and scientists that depend on the mathematics that they know. And if you make the wrong mathematical model that doesn't match the real world, then the mathematical model is going to tell you it won't work, when in reality it will. We haven't learned to model the way the bee flies yet, is the real answer. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay, we don't know how to model the flying of that bee yet. Not that everything that we know says the bee can't fly, it's we don't know how to model it yet. But we know the bee flies.
Is that figured on his body weight against the size of his wings and stuff?
Couldn't answer that.
Oh.
It's just something I've always heard, and I always thought, I need to check that out.
Well, they're having trouble understanding how hummingbirds fly too.
Yeah, hummingbirds.
Especially
You're talking about wing action that is so fast. For one thing, it's hard to photograph and understand exactly how the wings of a hummingbird move or the wings of a bee.
Yeah, they're always curious about the amount of energy that he consumes to do
Yeah,
that.
yes, that's the other half of the equation. So what I would say about that is all that I really think is we haven't learned how to model how the bumblebee flies yet. We'll get there. Maybe in a few more years if the Lord delays his coming. We'll get smarter slowly. But we also don't necessarily learn from our mistakes. So I just wanted to show you this. This is how complex it can get. Not all of these equations are straight temperature difference. Some of them are temperature differences to the squared. Some the radiation temperature difference to the fourth, plus a lot of other factors that govern what actually happens.
Well, that one you had earlier had even area.
What's that?
That one formula even had area in it. How much the area? A is the area of the surface.
Yeah, this is only one half of it. This
If you
is,
have,
yeah,
if
you
lived
got
up north.
Yeah, if I were to write an equation that took us all the way from my hand, wherever my nerve ending is, through the rest of my hand, through the contact joint, through the plastic, through the boundary layer of the velocity of the water, into the center of the water, I'd have about 5 of these equations all lined up that had to work, and I had to have the coefficients just right to get it. The point I was making with this is most people I've talked to think that at a minimum, all we're feeling is the temperature difference between our hand and whatever we're touching. That doesn't explain why a ceramic plate sitting in your air-conditioned house on the coffee table has a different feel when you touch it than a styrofoam plate when you pick it up. Try that sometime. That heavy China ceramic plate that you left sitting on that coffee table for 2 weeks in your house, they're all the same temperature, but that heavy ceramic plate is going to feel colder than that styrofoam plate because the heat transfer rate between your hand and those two items are different. If you pick up I've had blocks of aluminum that sitting around on my desk for a while at work, and blocks of steel. I can pick up that block of aluminum and it feels different than that block of steel, but they've been sitting on my desk for 2 weeks and I know they're the same temperature. Okay, when I went out and played with the snow and my hand got so cold it hurt, and I came in and I turned on the cold water and put my hand in it, it felt like scalding hot water. I said, something's wrong, I'm not feeling the right temperatures here. What I'm feeling is the heat transfer rate. Yes, it's based on that temperature difference, but that water's not really hot. It's just a higher temperature than my hand, by a good margin, because my hand was really cold and the nerves in my hand were cold.
It's hot compared to your hand.
What's that?
It's hot compared to your hand.
It's hot compared, it's really hot compared to my hand. And it's probably not a linear function, because it's temperature to the fourth in some cases, temperature squared in another, and straight temperature difference in others. And it may change as the temperature range gets different. But this is how God has made us. This is the way the world is about us. To me, and it's hard for me to express this, to me this is a source of confidence, a source of faith in God. Because I know I didn't just happen, you didn't just happen. The things around us are so much more complex. I know they didn't just happen in an explosion. Somebody designed this world and this universe we live in. And that being that designed and created this world and this universe that we live in is unimaginably intelligent and knowledgeable to me. And every time I go through things like this and try to figure out things that are happening out there, you know, look at the weather, look at how birds fly, look at, I mean, so many things. And then you begin to realize that the doctors and the medical people are stumbling around in the dark most of the time. They do a much better job than they did 200 years ago. But we still don't know. They can't make a person. They can't even take carbon material and make it living. Who gives it life? All of these things. And so when basically, so can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned? One can walk on hot coals and his feet not scared. So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife, whoever touches her shall not be innocent. Now what's he saying in verse 27 and 28?
These things are dangerous. Stay away from
Don't
them.
do it.
He's saying this is certain. You're absolutely certain you can't reach down with your hand and pick up coals and not get burned. You can't walk on them and your feet not get seared and damaged. What he's fixing to say, he's saying, what I'm fixing to tell you is absolutely certain. It's as certain as you know those facts to be. That's what he's saying. Or at least that's what I think he's saying. You think that's what he's got in mind? He's fixing to tell you, here's something that's certain. Here's something that's sure. So he who goes into his neighbor's wife, whoever touches her, shall not be innocent. It's absolutely certain you're not going to be innocent. It's absolute, and there's some other things that's going to follow this that's just as certain, and we're going to talk about those as we go through Proverbs. What he's saying with this is, just as sure as you know that if you try to take fire into your lap or into your hands, you're going to get burned. Is there any way that it's not going to happen? And now you know how. It's because of that heat transfer. It's because of that energy transfer from the fire to you, from the coals to you. It's absolutely certain. That's what he's saying. This is an absolute truth that I'm fixing to give to you. Remember that appeal? Listen to what I say. That appeal of the writer to the reader, to listen, to understand, to do those things. That's what these two verses are saying. It's absolutely certain what I'm telling you. He says, people do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy himself when he is starving. Yet when he is found, he must restore sevenfold. He may have to give up all the substance of his house. Do you agree with that? The things that follow that, these are things he's wanting to understand. These are things that are true. Do we not have some sympathy for the man who steals because he's hungry?
We should.
We should. But is he still guilty?
Yes.
Is he still going to be found to have to restore seven? Now this is interesting. In the Levitical law, if a thief stole something and he was caught, how much did he have to restore? Hmm?
Seven, I think sevenfold,
Mm-mm.
not seven.
No, it's not seven.
Twofold.
Twofold. In some cases, not even that. In some cases, just a fifth more than returning what he took under certain circumstances. It's only twofold. Why here seven? Why do you think a man that steals because he's hungry has to repay more than just an ordinary thief because he wanted it? Hmm? Well, this is written to the Jews, basically. They were told what? They were told to be hospitable. They were told, basically, love your neighbor as yourself. If he was hungry, why didn't he just go ask someone? Would they have given him food if he asked them? If someone came to your door and looked like they were hungry and asked you for food, would you give it to them? In all probability you would. And yet he went to steal. He had a choice. He didn't have to steal. I think that's one of the reasons why he has to restore more, because he didn't have to. Even though we have sympathy for him, basically, and I invite you to go read some of those Old Testament laws about that. Because now he's got to restore sevenfold. You see, he may have to give up all the substance of his house to restore sevenfold, depending on what he stole. I think because he had a choice, he didn't have to. And so this is one of the things I think when we, here's another one, Leviticus 19. This is an Old Testament passage. This is love your neighbor as yourself in the Old Testament. This is Leviticus 19.
Well,
Yeah.
before we move on, that verse says, if he steals to satisfy himself. You know, I was sitting here thinking, okay, his family's hungry and they're going to feel sorry for him, and it might even be a pride thing. He's ashamed to admit he can't supply food to his family. Then I thought, it says satisfy himself.
Yes.
This made me think of Paul saying, if you're not going to work, you're not going to eat.
You're not going to work, you're not going to eat.
So there is no family in here that at first I was thinking of. So this is saying to me, this guy lays around, he don't want to work.
You don't want to work, you don't want to do anything.
And yet when you turn around, he steals food.
He steals your food. So if he gets caught now, he's really going to be, he's going to have to restore more. I think you probably got something there. I was just thinking, he has a choice though. He could ask for the food. If he's really hungry, he could ask for the food. Now, if he's hungry because he hadn't worked, the passage you quoted, Paul said, if a man will not work, neither shall he eat.
Right.
See, I knew one guy that was that way one time. And he wouldn't supply his family either. He expected the people of the church to take care of his family until he wanted to work. And there was only a certain kind of work he would do and a certain kind of pay he would accept. And if he couldn't get that, he wouldn't work, and the church had to take care of his family. Now, this is the kind of guy there. I think that you're talking, I think you're absolutely right, Steve. I think that's the difference. Should we have sympathy for those people who are hungry if they haven't got any way to eat? Yes, we should. But what's the command? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. What does that include?
Making sure they have food.
Make sure he or his family, we take care of people when they're good. Now, I thought for a long time this was the only place this occurred in the Old Testament. It's not. It occurs again a few verses later. He says, if a stranger dwells with you in your land, you shall not mistreat him. The stranger who dwells among you shall be to you as one born among you. You shall love him as yourself. Same thing. It just describes him as a neighbor. He's living with you. He's your neighbor. He's next to you. You should love him as yourself. It's not exactly the same words, but I think it's the same command. Just making sure that they understood that. And I'm running out of time, so. Same kind of thing with Exodus 23. These are kind of how the laws worked. This is the one about restoring double. By the way, when Job underwent all of his losses, what did he get back at the end of the book?
7 times as much?
Twice.
Twice, okay.
The Lord restored to Job as if he had stolen it from him. And when he said to Satan, although you incited me to destroy him without cause. The Lord did that apparently without cause in his view, and he restored to Job twice what he had at the beginning. Now, I don't know how you restore a family that's dead without resurrection. I don't think
He
that
had twice
happened.
the children, isn't that what happened?
Yeah, he lost children too.
Well, yeah, but he had twice as many.
Yeah, but it says at the end, go read the end of the book of Job, it says, Lord restored double, basically gave him double what he had at the beginning. This is the restoration of the thief here. This is what you were talking about. This is where it comes from, folks. I don't think normally the thief had to restore 7 times. There's a few others if you want to search for it where the thief has to restore what he stole plus 1/5 of what he stole. So there are some circumstances that it's not even double. So it's interesting here. This may be the Leviticus one. But basically all these things are set up for a rule of law. I'm out of time. We're going to offer an opportunity to come to the Lord, offer an invitation. And we'll pick up here next time. I'm going to talk just a little bit of review about this. I won't review the science class. Rita, if you want to know what the science class is about, come talk to me after the lesson. It's interesting, or at least it's interesting to me. I probably bored y'all to death. So, as is our custom, let's offer an opportunity for anyone who needs to come to God in whatever way you need to come. Would you come forward while we stand and sing?
I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are lower, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, he is the just one, he hath the words of life. hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to enter the kingdom, leaving the paths of sin. Friends may oppose me, foes may beset me, still will I enter in. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee.
I don't have any more announcements to make at this time. Yeah.
Betty Fielding has found out that she has ovarian cancer, and she's gonna have to have a hysterectomy. And when she does all that, we're gonna have to pitch in and try to help her with Ed and help her when it happens.
Okay, but we don't know the timing on that right
I
now.
think she has a doctor's appointment on the 29th.
Okay. There'll be more announcements about this, because we'll have to make some arrangements. I don't know of any other things that need to be said right now. I'd kind of like to have my water bottles back, if you don't mind.
What?
Steve, would you dismiss us, please?
Our Father which art in heaven, we thank you for this chance of being able to come together to worship you and to study your word. We thank you for the faith that we have, and we thank you for the word that we have, and the freedom that we have to study it and to share it with others. We ask that you would be with those who are ill. We ask that you would be with Betty as she is going to the doctors. We hope that things can be better. We ask that you would heal the ones who are ill and allow them to return to us. As we depart, be with us in our home studies. Let us be willing to take the things that we learn and put it to use in our lives. To be willing to reach out to our neighbors and share your gospel with them. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Coming back.
I've got a theory, that water in those bottles is warmer than it was from the heat transfer.
Uh-oh.
Not material.
Huh?
That-